Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today. This webinar is a presentation of the Sustainable Solar Education Project, which is powered by the U.S. Department of Energy's Sunshot Initiative and managed by the Clean Energy States Alliance, also known as CESA. The topic for our webinar is the Solar in Your Community Challenge, and we have a speaker from the DOE to talk with us about that. And we'll also be hearing some more from CESA Project Director Nate Hausman. Before I pass it over to them, I'd like to go over a few quick housekeeping notes. All of our participants for this webinar are in listen-only mode. You have two options to access the audio portion of this webinar. You can either call in using a telephone, or you can connect using your computer, mic, and speakers. And there's some instructions on your screen for that. A very important note, we ask that you please submit your questions throughout the webinar as you think of them by typing them into the question box on your webinar console and hitting send. We'll be reading through your questions as they come in, and we will save some time at the end of our presentations for a Q&A with the audience. We'll get to as many questions as we can. To make sure that we get to your question, type it in as soon as you think of it. Don't wait until the end. And again, you can do that on the question box on your webinar console. A final note, this webinar is being recorded. You will find a recording of this webinar as well as all of our previous CESA webinars on our website at cesa.org/webinars. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to our host for this webinar, Nate Hausman. Nate is a project director here at the Clean Energy States Alliance.
Thanks, Samantha. And before I turn things over to Shubha to discuss the Department of Energy's Solar in Your Community Challenge, I wanted to tell you a little bit about who the Clean Energy States Alliance is and about our Sustainable Solar Education Project. So the Clean Energy States Alliance, or CESA, is a national nonprofit network of public agencies and organizations working together to advance clean energy. We're made up mostly of state agencies. You can see a bunch of our members on this slide. Next. And I want to tell you also about the Sustainable Solar Education Project, which is a CESA-run project to help state and municipal officials ensure that distributed solar remains consumer-friendly and benefits low and moderate-income households. Through the Sustainable Solar Education Project, we're developing a variety of educational resources for state and municipal officials on topics related to solar consumer protection and solar equitability. The project is funded by the U.S. Department of Energy Sunshot Initiative's Solar Training and Education for Professionals program. And because DOE's Solar in Your Community Challenge, what we're going to be talking about today, seeks to expand solar access to low and moderate income households, the challenge dovetails nicely with some of the work that we're doing under our Sustainable Solar Education Project. It also dovetails well with some of the work that our sister organization, Clean Energy Group, is doing under its Resilient Power Project. So I'll talk a little bit more about these projects and give you an overview of what CESA and the Clean Energy Group is doing related to these and some relevant resources that might be relevant to Solar in Your Community Challenge teams. And I'll do that after Shubha's presentation. So with that, let me introduce to you Shubha Jaishankar, who will give you an overview of the Solar in Your Community Challenge. She'll talk about its rules and goals and how organizations can participate. Shubha has been a member of the operations team at the Sunshot Initiative since 2014. She primarily supports the Balance of Systems soft costs team, where she also provides project management and support for various programs, including community solar, state energy strategies, and workforce and training. Shubha graduated from Boston University with a BA in International Relations. She also holds an MS in Global Affairs from New York University. She wrote her master's thesis on rapid urbanization, focusing on the nexus of food, water, and energy security, and how the impacts of climate change will affect overall human security. To follow up on that research, she completed a graduate certificate in climate management and policy from George Washington University. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shubha.
Great. Thank you, Nate, and thank you, Samantha, and everyone at CESA for letting us hold this webinar. We're really excited about this program, and this is a great audience for us to reach. So I want to tell you more about our new program, the Solar in Your Community Challenge. So here's the agenda for my portion of the webinar. First, I'll discuss some background on how this challenge came about, and then transition into the program goals, team structures, the evaluation criteria, the application process, timeline, and final prizes. At the end, I'll take questions that you have, which you can type in the questions box, as Samantha mentioned before. And just a heads up, if I don't get to your question on this call, you can always send us an email, and the address is solar.community@ee.doe.gov. And that will pop up later on the slide, so if you miss me saying it now, you'll see it again later. So let's get started here with a little background. Since 2011, Sunshot has continuously worked towards its goal of making solar electricity cost competitive with conventionally generated electricity by 2020 without subsidies. Solar energy has seen tremendous progress. Today, the solar industry is more than 90% of the way to achieving Sunshot's original 2020 cost target of 6 cents per kilowatt hour for utility-scale photovoltaic power. Building off of the original Sunshot vision, the new goal for 2030 is to cut the levelized cost of electricity from utility-scale solar by another 50% to 3 cents per kilowatt hour. And Sunshot will do this while also addressing grid integration challenges and addressing key market barriers in order to enable greater solar adoption. So even though the solar market has grown tremendously in the last 5 years, it has been an uneven growth, both geographically and demographically. In 2015, 5 states represented 72% of the solar market, and over half the installed capacity is in California. Solar access remains overwhelmingly skewed towards middle-class and affluent households. Low-income households face a number of barriers going solar, including being less likely to own their own roofs, having less access to loans and financing, and being more likely to have lower credit scores. So all of this information leads us to the problem statement of how to create new models to expand access to solar. Nearly half of all rooftops can't host solar due to insufficient roof space, lack of control in the case of renters and condo owners, or shading concerns from trees that are too tall or covering the roof. So even though the investment tax credit has grown the solar market, it excludes individuals and organizations with no federal tax liability, which includes nonprofit and governmental organizations, low-income individuals, and retirees. In order to make solar to these underserved segments, new and innovative business and financial models are needed. Sunshot is calling on all entrepreneurs and organizations to create, develop, and demonstrate first-of-their-kind models in order to quickly get to scale. One example of an emerging business model that can expand access is community solar, which allows multiple customers to subscribe to an off-site solar array. However, it has not yet been successfully applied to low-income customers at scale. Over the last year, Sunshot has been trying to bring this issue to the forefront. The Solar in Your Community Prize Challenge was born from the work done over the last year with the National Community Solar Partnership, which convened a nationwide conversation around community solar barriers and best practices in partnership with the White House and other federal agencies like the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Department of Agriculture. The partnership aimed to expand solar access to all and includes over 150 partners from solar companies, nonprofit organizations, state and community leaders, and financial institutions. We held 5 regional workshops from November 2015 to June of 2016, kicked off at the White House, and then we went to Denver, Atlanta, Boston, and Minnesota. These workshops reached over 500 people, and some key takeaways included a strong interest in community solar from a broad variety of stakeholders. Community and shared solar are the fastest growing solar market sectors, and low-income households continue to be left out of the market, but they could be well served through shared and community solar models. The biggest needs are capacity building in financial institutions and governments, and innovative business and financial models to reach low and moderate income households. So from all of that stakeholder convening, the Solar in Your Community Challenge was born. The challenge is designed to overcome barriers to LMI solar to catalyze the LMI solar market. 40% of Americans are considered LMI, which is defined by HUD as making 80% below the area median income. Project teams will compete for $1 million in final prizes, including a $500,000 grand prize. In addition to the grand prize, selected teams will receive small cash awards to seed teams' efforts and technical assistance vouchers. There are a number of goals the challenge aims to hit. First, demonstrating success for new models that expand access to solar, like aiming to significantly expand LMI solar towards a goal of 1 gigawatt by 2020, and tapping into markets like local governments and nonprofits that are ineligible for the ITC. Second, building local capacity to support community-based solar projects, like introducing municipalities, utilities, and financial institutions to solar. Lastly, establishing a network and library of resources, like giving participants the opportunity to learn from their peers, such as been done by EERE's Better Building Challenge, and being able to provide general resources to the sector, including standardized documents, templates, and other legal and tax expert information to financial institutions, utilities, and local jurisdictions. As for the desired outcomes, it would be great to see dozens of community-based solar business and financial models across the country that have been piloted and demonstrated, such as revolving funds, solarized campaigns, affordable housing bill credits, and utility programs. This challenge will lay the groundwork to double the solar market and realize over $16 billion in economic potential by 2020. So how can you participate? There's two ways, by either forming a team or by providing expertise. To form a team, everyone is eligible so long as the organization is based in the United States, but should include multiple stakeholders. These can consist of local government entities, nonprofit organizations, community groups, etc. Teams can either work to develop a portfolio of solar projects in their communities, or they can work to create new solar programs that expand solar access to LMI households and nonprofits. As for the experts, they will provide technical assistance to teams throughout the 18-month challenge by providing the coaching, expertise, and resources teams need to create innovative business models that will work. Experts can either be coaches who support teams throughout the entire challenge or consultants who are subject matter experts. And all of this will be in more detail in the coming slides. So the following few slides are for those interested in joining the challenge as a project or program team. Teams will consist of a wide variety of stakeholders, including solar companies and entrepreneurs in partnership with key local stakeholders, such as utilities, banks, nonprofits, municipalities, and community leaders. Teams will develop portfolios of solar projects anywhere from 25 kilowatts to 5 megawatts in size that benefit LMI customers or community-serving nonprofit institutions like schools, health clinics, food banks, or community centers. Or teams can develop programs that enable, incentivize, or support the above types of projects. So to reiterate, there is a difference between projects versus programs. A project is where actual solar power is developed and is going to targeted customers. A program is an initiative that will enable the creation of solar projects. The energy and benefits must go to at least 20% of LMI households for projects, or at least 60% to nonprofits or state, local, and tribal governments for a program. So those are the two main differences. And I understand it's a little confusing, but basically projects, you're developing actual power going to customers, and a program is an initiative that will enable creation of these solar projects. So here's some examples to make it a little more clear. Examples of projects include a solar developer partnering with corporations to bring PV to 1,000 low-income families in an innovative, scalable, and successful project that is then being replicated by others across the United States. Or another one is a pro-profit developer pursuing a 5-megawatt portfolio of shared solar projects for LMI subscribers. Examples of programs include a utility initiative to put solar on local food banks and hospitals. Or another example would be community banks offering a new low-interest loans for low-income households to go solar. The above list of examples is not exhaustive. Sunshot encourages teams to pursue new and innovative models that have not yet been demonstrated. Teams should build their programs and projects with the goal of aggregation and scaling up. Sunshot would prefer teams with plans to create long-term impact and a clearly articulated pathway to replicate their success over one-time only projects. In addition, teams should consider how their plan will lead to capacity building and learning within the community in order to make future solar installations faster and easier. So how are teams selected? Sunshot will assess applications to enter the challenge based on 3 criteria. Both the impact and team metrics are quantitative, looking for replicability of business models, market potential, and team experience and execution. Impact is worth 40% and innovation is worth 30%. Oh, I didn't talk about innovation yet. Team is 30%. The innovation is a more qualitative measure, looking for new and creative ways to overcome existing market barriers. So here's some more information about the seed funding and technical assistance vouchers. Teams will submit an initial application to participate in the challenge, after which Sunshot will select approximately 50 teams for seed awards. Teams selected for seed awards will be given awards based on the size of the team's projected portfolio of projects, that's for project-focused teams, or their program's projected reach measured in kilowatt capacity. For example, teams that pursue over 100 kilowatts of solar will be eligible for larger seed prizes. In addition to seed awards, Sunshot will provide all selected teams, up to 100 teams, with technical assistance vouchers. Selected teams will receive a $10,000 voucher to receive customized technical assistance support from a qualified provider. And I will further explain the qualifications for TA providers a little later in this presentation. Sunshot will distribute these seed award funds as teams successfully complete and verify key milestones outlined in the table below. After a team submits verifiable supporting documentation showing milestone completion, and upon approval from Sunshot, the prize administrator will disperse allocated funds to the teams within 60 days. Teams must complete all milestones within the 18-month period of performance in order to win the maximum seed award amount. As I mentioned earlier, teams will compete for $1 million in final prizes awarded to the top 5 teams with the best performance and the biggest potential to scale up quickly. The grand prize winner will receive $500,000 and the runner-up will receive $200,000. 3 additional final prizes of $100,000 each will reward the top performer that pursued nonprofit projects, nonprofit programs, and LMI programs. In addition, the DOE will provide non-monetary recognition to selected outstanding teams that have demonstrated innovation and superior leadership. And now I will, how got in here again? Here we go. Now I will discuss the role of experts in this challenge. So Sunshot is looking for technical assistance providers, also known as experts, to apply to the challenge to either help guide teams throughout the entire challenge process. Consultants can provide either general or specialized technical assistance, while coaches would support teams throughout the entire challenge by answering questions, assessing the team progress, and providing the team with advice. As mentioned before, up to the top 100 teams will receive $10,000 in vouchers to spend on technical assistance. And so you'll see here, consultants provide general technical assistance, which is providing assistance to all teams via either webinars, tools they already have, or reports they've written. And it can also be specialized TA, which is providing one-on-one customized support to specific teams. Coaches support teams throughout the entire challenge by, again, answering their questions, assessing their progress, and providing any advice solicited by the team. So what kind of experts exactly are we talking about? Sunshot is seeking experts in a variety of fields such as solar finance, law, regulations, software, and community engagement. TA providers will support the community solar expertise across the country and help contribute to a publicly available repository of documents, toolkits, webinars, and templates. Experts will help teams succeed. Teams can independently select and work with their preferred TA provider or providers, and teams can decide which services they need and use their vouchers to pay for these services without an actual exchange of funds. DOE and its prize administrator will manage the transfer of credits and reimburse the TA providers. So now that you've learned about what the challenge is, let's go over how to apply. First, you have to create a team. Early applications were due on January 6th, but don't worry, you still have until March 17th to submit your application for the regular deadline that we have. The next phase of the project or program is the project or program implementation, which will last 18 months. And lastly, final prizes will be administered in January of 2019. If you're a prospective team, here's how you can apply. First, you will visit the challenge website, solarinyourcommunity.org, to register. Once registered, you will complete the written application, film a short video no longer than 3 minutes, and provide a short public-facing description. Describe the project or program, your team members, and the impact your project or program will have, and how it will expand the solar market. For a full list of application requirements, again, please visit our website, solarinyourcommunity.org. For prospective coaches, you will also need to register before applying, and then you will submit a one-page narrative about why you want to coach, your relevant experience, and the impact you plan to have on your team or your multiple teams. You will also need at least one letter of recommendation. And again, for all requirements, please visit our website, and that information is all there. Lastly, for consultants, once you've registered, you'll need to provide a list and overview of the products and services that you can offer, the price breakdown for using these products and services, and case studies, photos, and other supporting materials that you might have. You can refer to the website for a full list of full application requirements. So how are the winners chosen? A team of reviewers will evaluate the team's applications, innovations, and impact, and will recommend the top teams to receive seed awards, technical assistance vouchers, and a chance to compete for the final prizes. Final prizes will be determined through evaluation of progress over the 18 months, as well as the team's overall ability to create replicable, scalable, and sustainable innovative business models. Here are some frequently asked questions that we've received so far, which we've gotten multiple times, so it's probably, if you have these questions that you've already typed in, maybe I can help you out a little bit. So can you be on a team and be an expert? No, you cannot do both of those things. You have to be one or the other. If an entity is part of a team but not a team lead, can it apply as a consultant? Again, no. You have to, decide whether you're going to be on a project or program team or be an expert. You can't do both. Can I be on several teams? And the answer to that is yes. You can lead one team and not participate on other teams. You can be a member of several teams, and you can lead a project and be a member of a program team. So essentially, if you want to be on two teams, you just cannot be the primary team member for both of those teams. You can be a primary on one and a secondary on the other, or you can be a secondary on both. That's fine. And how can seed funds be used? They're used at your discretion. It should be used to achieve the goals of your project or program, but there's, no oversight per se on what you're using it for. But if, again, if you want to try to win the grand prize or at least advance your solar project or program, you should definitely use those seed funds for that. And again, for more frequently asked questions, please visit our website and solarinyourcommunity.org. On the top right, you'll see a resources button. And then once you're on that page, the FAQ page is on the top row over there. So click on the FAQs, and we have them broken down by topic, and we're constantly adding, new questions that we've received, just so, to be as transparent as possible. I understand there's a lot to this challenge, so we want to make sure that we answer everyone's questions accordingly. And so here's the full challenge outline. The application deadline, again, is March 17th, and there's also a late application date of August 1st, but getting seed funding and technical assistance vouchers will be dependent on how much, if any, money is left by that point. However, late applicants can still be able to access resources available on the website and compete for the grand prizes. The period of performance ends on October 31st, 2018, with final prizes awarded in January of 2019. So thank you for taking the time to learn more about the Solar in Your Community Challenge. Please visit the website to learn more information, and if you want to send us any questions that you have along the way, please send that to solar.community@ee.doe.gov.
Great, thank you, Shubha. That was a really helpful overview, and we're getting a number of good questions coming in. Before opening it up to those questions, I want to share some resources that might be relevant to teams applying to participate in the challenge. They might relate to community solar program or project development, or to bringing the benefits of solar to low and moderate income communities more generally. So first I'll share a little bit about what we're doing under the Sustainable Solar Education Project, the CESA project I mentioned at the outset of this webinar. Then I'll talk about some relevant resources that have been developed more broadly by the Clean Energy States Alliance. And then lastly, I'll note some resources that have been developed by Clean Energy Group, CESA's sister organization, under its Resilient Power Project. All right. So as I noted previously, the Sustainable Solar Education Project is focused on two issues that we think are important for the solar market's long-term growth. One is solar consumer protection, the other is solar equitability. And through the project, we're developing guides, webinars, online course material, and training on solar consumer protection and efforts to bring the benefits of solar to low and moderate income communities. So one of the ways we're doing that and sharing information about the project is through a free monthly e-newsletter that contains resources and upcoming activities related to solar equitability and consumer protection from across the country. You can sign up for this, the newsletter through CESA's Sustainable Solar Education Project webpage. That's at www.cesa.org/projects/sustainable-solar. That's the website on this slide. Great. So I said we're developing various guides on solar equitability and consumer protection. Well, in fact, we've already published a couple of guides. One is Solar Information for Consumers, a guide for states. This guide explains why states should provide consumer information on solar. It describes the types of information that can be useful and points out existing educational efforts from states and other entities that provide models and useful resources. We've also got recently published a guide called Publicly Supported Solar Loan Programs, a guide for states and municipalities. This guide describes some of the general factors state and municipal governments should consider when assessing whether to launch a public solar loan program. It explains various design elements and offers some case studies too. In the next several months, we'll be releasing a series of additional guides. One will be on solar equipment installation, licensing, and certification. Another will be on solar and storage for low to moderate income communities. Another on policies and programs to bring the benefits of solar to low income residents. And lastly, one on consumer protection for community solar participants. So stay tuned for these guides. And we've also got several project webinar recordings available on CESA's website, and a couple of upcoming webinars that might be of interest that you can sign up for that are in the queue. We've done a Residential Solar Financing 101 webinar, also an advice for states on providing solar information to consumers based on the guide I just mentioned, and solar consumer protection webinar. This Thursday we'll be hosting a webinar on a project guide we recently published, the one I also mentioned on public solar loan program design. The webinar will feature Travis Lauder from NREL, who authored the guide, and we'll also be producing a guide on standards and requirements for solar equipment installation, licensing, and certification, and we'll be hosting a webinar on that guide on Thursday, February 9th. Some other CISA resources that we've developed that may be relevant to Solar in Your Community Challenge teams include a directory of state clean energy programs and policies for low-income residents. The directory, it's a survey of state activities that seek to bring the benefits of clean energy to LMI residents and communities. It focuses mostly on generation, clean energy generation programs. It also covers some energy efficiency initiatives, but it doesn't include low-income weatherization programs. And then also highlighted on this slide is Homeowner's Guide to Solar Financing, Leases, Loans, and PPAs. It's designed to help homeowners make sound solar financing decisions, describes leases, loans, power purchase agreements, explains advantages, disadvantages of each, and how they might compare to a cash purchase of a system. We've worked with various states to produce state-specific versions of the guide, including New Mexico, Massachusetts, New York, and we've also published a Spanish version of this guide, which can be downloaded from CISA's website too. Other CISA resources that might be of interest. In 2015, we helped facilitate a private letter ruling concluding that a particular owner of solar panels in an off-site community shared solar array is eligible for the residential solar tax credit under 25D of the U.S. tax code. That ruling, it should be noted, is specific to the particular taxpayer in question, but we packaged it, and we think it might be instructive to other community solar project teams trying to develop projects similar to the one that's discussed in it. It offers, so this particular resource is a cover letter discussing sort of the legal significance of the private letter ruling. It includes the private letter ruling itself and an FAQ, a frequently asked questions leaflet on community solar more generally. And we also did a webinar on the private letter ruling featuring the attorneys we worked with on the project, and a recording of that is also available. And I do want to emphasize that again, so we will make these slide deck available on CISA's website, and we'll have a PDF of the slides that will include links to all these resources. So we will provide links, and that will be available on CISA's website. So another project that we're involved with that might be helpful and relevant to participating Solar in Your Community Challenge teams is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory's Solar Technical Assistance Team. NREL Stat Network provides direct technical assistance to state and local governments on matters that require solar market expertise. NREL's partnered with us and also with NASIO, the National Association of State Energy Officials, on its outreach and delivery of this project. Technical assistance requests could be working with policy and program implementation staff in state energy offices. That's one example of the kind of trajectory it could take. State and municipal bodies can apply for technical assistance through NREL's STAT webpage, and the link to that webpage is listed on this slide. Okay, great. And I mentioned before, too, that CISA has a sister organization, Clean Energy Group, that's developed a bunch of relevant resources as well through its Resilient Power Project. Clean Energy Group is a national nonprofit organization of innovative policy technology, working on innovative policy technology and financing programs in the areas of clean energy and climate change. Clean Energy Group, or CEG's Resilient Power Project, is focused on accelerating market development of clean energy technologies for resilient power applications, and particularly those that serve low-income communities and vulnerable populations during disasters and other power disruptions. So what does the Resilient Power Project do? Well, we increase investment, both public and private, in clean, resilient power systems. We work to protect those low-income and vulnerable communities, provide technical assistance and analysis to help agencies and project developers get deals done. This includes reports on project implementation, financing tools, best practices, and a lot of Resilient Power Project resources have been produced, and I'll just share some of those with you, but you can go on Clean Energy Group's website and find a lot more of these as well. So one is a project overview on the McKnight Lane project. That's a rural, resilient solar plus storage modular home project in Waltham, Vermont. That's the type of project that might be of interest to teams participating in the Solar in Your Community Challenge. We've got a report on reducing electricity bills and affordable housing using solar plus storage, particularly in California. Some guidance on energy storage procurement documents for municipalities, solar plus storage checklists for cities and project developers, guidance on what states and cities should do for resilient power planning, and other guidance for solar plus storage applications. And on many of those, we've also produced webinars. Some of them are sort of project-specific webinars for projects that could be replicable. That includes the McKnight Lane project. That's the Rural Resilient Solar Plus Storage Modular Home project in Vermont. So we did a webinar on that. We also did a webinar on a Sterling, Massachusetts municipal microgrid and a solar plus storage project on a Minnesota nature center. So those are some of the sort of specific, project-specific webinars we've done, but you can see we've done sort of more general policy webinars as well on using solar plus storage for environmental equity. We did a two-part on bringing the benefits of solar to affordable housing, resilient solar retrofits, reducing electricity bills in California multifamily affordable housing, and some of the procurement guidance based on the resources I mentioned in the previous slide, and other how-to resources on building energy resilient communities. Okay, so that's sort of an overview of some of the resources that both Clean Energy States Alliance and the Clean Energy Group has available that might be relevant to Solar in Your Community Challenge teams. I want to open it up for questions for Shubha on the rules and the contours of the challenge itself. And so if you haven't already, please type in questions you have about the challenge, and I'll let Shubha field those. Okay, so the first question, Shubha, is when will early applicants, those who submitted proposals on or before the January 6th early application deadline, find out if they're accepted?
Great question. I don't have a specific date. I do know that our team has had a meeting to, go over how to review all of those applications. We're having another meeting about that in a couple days. So I don't have an exact date for you, but I can inquire. I also would like to know. But it should be, it'll be before the March 17th deadline of the other round of applications, but I don't have an exact date. I can get back to you on that.
Great, thanks. Question about clarifying how consultants are paid. Do they name their price and then teams choose to work or not work with them? Will teams that don't receive vouchers still be paying to work with technical assistance providers?
So the first part of that question is, yeah, the consultants, they set their price based on, whatever their configuration is, and then teams who are looking for that service will determine, what's within their budget, what they want to spend, and so that's how they determine who they choose and how much they're going to pay based on what the rate has been set by the consultant. The second question, the second part of that question, if I'm understanding correctly, is if a team has not been selected for seed funding, but is that means they wouldn't be participating in this challenge. So they can probably reach out separately to those consultants to try to work on their idea. But I don't know exactly. I don't know if I'm completely understanding the second part of that question.
Gotcha. Well, let me shoot another one to you. This one is about low and moderate income status and how that's determined. Is that determined on an individual household basis or on sort of a income by consensus block geographic basis?
Yeah, so we're using the HUD definition of low and moderate income, which is, wherever you live, it's making 80% below the median income of where you live. So it's, we don't have a blanket number. It's just we're using this guideline from HUD so that if you live in Detroit, Michigan, whatever the median income is, if you're making 80% below that, you would be considered LMI.
Great, thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense to me. Another question, are new applications, the ones that post January 6th that missed the early deadline, reviewed on a rolling basis leading up to the March deadline? That is, should applicants seek to get applications in very soon, sort of the earlier the better?
We are not reviewing them on a rolling basis. We will be reviewing them after the March 17th deadline.
Gotcha. And I think I know the answer to this question, but can a municipality form a project team?
Yes.
Great.
Again,
the challenges.
As long as they're based in the U.S., that's fine. Anyone can participate.
Okay. The challenges being offered to benefit both low and moderate income communities and governments and nonprofits. Do projects that benefit governments have the same chance as those being selected that benefit LMI residents?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the project or program that, it seems, it's new, it's innovative, it looks like it has potential and can be scalable, then, we're reviewing everything. Again, like that, if you go back to that, you don't have to, but if you look at the slides later and you look at our selection criteria, you'll see that there are 3 different criteria: impact, innovation, and team. So even if you're stronger in like 2 areas instead of the 3rd, or whatever it is, like everything's weighted, and so we will be looking at everything, and we're not saying one is better than the other. It's just we have to take everything when we read it, and if it's if it hits all of our checkpoints in terms of what we're looking for, then it would be just as good as an LMI project, for example, that also hits the same check mark.
Great, thanks. This is a question about teams already involved in a Sunshot program. Does a team that's already received Sunshot funding through another program, does that preclude an award under this program?
No.
And I guess you already talked about this to some degree, but the advantage of an early application, can you review that one more time?
Well, okay, so the early application deadline was this past Friday, and if you are selected, it's just the advantage is you get your seed funding, earlier than all the other applicants who would be selected after the March 17th deadline. So you just have a little heads up in terms of the seed funding and time to start your project. But other than that, like if you apply by the March 17th deadline, they're going to review every application that we get. So it's a tiny advantage, but and we understand that, because of the holidays, it probably slowed down some people's ability to apply early, and so, you're not penalized by any means if you didn't apply by Friday. You still have a couple months to put in a really good application.
Great, thanks. A question about the administration and reporting. One person observed that it looks time-consuming. Can funds be used to pay some of the funding received through a team, through this program, be received to pay staff to handle the reporting and administration requirements?
Yeah, I think I mentioned in some slide that I think it was actually on that FAQ. Actually, no, I don't remember what slide it was on. But essentially, once you get your seed funding, we're not, there's no real oversight on what you're doing with that money. We assume you're going to be using it towards your project goals, and if part of your project goals is administrating the project, then yeah, that's fine.
Great. We're getting a lot of questions on sort of how secure this funding is, given administration changes and things like that. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that or have a sense of that, Shubha.
I don't have an answer for that other than what I've been told is that money's allocated, and we're operating as if it's just standard business as usual, and it shouldn't be something that hinders you from applying. And if something happens, something happens. But that's, I don't know anything, and we don't know anything. So just, if you want to apply, please apply.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, we're getting a lot of great questions in. Some are very sort of project specific, and I'm going through them as best I can. But there's a lot of great questions, and so we're probably not going to get to all of them. I just want to give folks a heads up about that. Got a question that says, it appears that a nonprofit can't be a team lead on a program-based project. Is this true, and if so, why?
I don't believe that's true. I want to make sure that isn't written anywhere, because if it is, then I'm mistaken. But I believe anyone can be a lead. It's just, yeah, anyone can be a team lead. The only issue with not being able to be a team lead is if you already a lead on another team. So say you want to work on multiple teams, you can't be a team lead twice. Other than that, anyone can be a team lead. That's
Gotcha.
My understanding. And if you want further clarification, if you have a specific example that you want to give us, and Nate, this is also helpful for all the questions you don't end up getting to answer just due to time, you can send us an email at solar.community@ee.doe.gov. And you can also check out our FAQ page on our website and see if your question has been answered. There's a ton in there, and I can't remember all of them, so it's quite possible that some variation of your question has been answered already. So, yeah, but it is my understanding that anyone can be a team lead, but if you work on multiple projects or programs, you cannot be a team lead twice. That's all it is.
Great, thank you. This is, if a project is rejected in round one, can the application be revised and resubmitted for a later round? So, on one deadline, I presume.
Yeah, so if you applied by the early deadline and the feedback is, if you're rejected or it says, please revise or add some information to your application to then resubmit by March 17th, you can do that.
Excellent, thanks. If a project is geared toward nonprofits and LMI individuals or governments and LMI, how should it be categorized? Does the Department of Energy have a preference on that?
Categorized in terms of
if it's benefiting, it seems like if it's benefiting, both sort of governments and LMI individuals.
Right. Well, I guess it just depends on whether or not it's going to be a project where, there will be targeted to consumers, like the electricity will be sent to the consumers, or if it's more of a program where you're planning you're strategizing and planning the program to then benefit the nonprofits and the LMI community. So it all depends on whether you think it's a project or a program. It doesn't matter if you're targeting both sets of groups. That's great. Like if you can impact all of those people while putting on a project or putting on a program, that's wonderful. But yeah, so yeah, I don't think we have a strict classification for that, as long as it's it's pretty clear whether or not you're going to be a project or whether you're going to be a program. Just figure out if it's something you're planning for later, or if you're producing the energy that's going to the customers, and then that would be a project. So that's pretty much the classifications that we have.
Okay, very good. Yeah, again, I'm getting a lot of questions, a lot of great questions, so thanks for sending those in. Many of them are project specific, so I'm trying to sort out the ones that might be applicable to multiple projects, but there can be some follow-up afterwards as well. So here's a question. What is the criteria for each final prize type, the grand prize, community impact, innovation, and leadership? Can you apply or be granted more than one final prize? So of those superlatives.
I don't believe so. Like we would pick one for each so that, multiple entities are recognized. You know what I mean?
Yep. Okay, a question on, must programs stand on their, must they stand on their own financially, or can the awards be figured into the ROI, the return on investment?
Ooh. Can you repeat that question so I can write it down, because I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, it's and we can get you some of these questions after the fact, but it's a question about programs being stand on their own financially, or whether the awards can be figured into the return on investment, the ROI.
Okay. I am not sure of that, so I'm going to check on it.
Okay. Here's a question about what's more important to the judges, capacity of a project or scalability? I know you already reviewed yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a little bit. So it's just, both are important. We do stress that, we are encouraging projects and programs that can be replicated, just so that, it doesn't just happen in one place. It can happen in, multiple places, have a trickle-down effect. However, if your project can't do that, but it's like really innovative, and it's like, looks like it's really successful, then you still will get high marks for that component of the criteria. It's just then you won't get as, you might get docked a little bit for the fact that it, doesn't seem to be scalable. But it's hard to choose whether we want something capacity versus scalability. Ideally both, but I understand that that's not always possible, but that's why we have the weighted criteria, so that it covers everything.
Gotcha. Okay, very good. Will there be any weight given in team participation selection to geographic diversity of the teams? Is there any information on the number of applications by geographic area? Is that something that the DOE considers?
Yeah, we don't have that information right now, but we are obviously looking for, we're trying to hit every state. We want every state to apply. That includes Alaska, the Dakotas, like everyone that, typically doesn't have much solar love. Like, we want everyone to apply because we know that the interest is there. of course, we would, really love if your project was geographically diverse, if you were working in multiple states, or if you're working in one state or multiple states that, isn't, I don't mean to call out California, but, California has most of our solar. If it's, say, in, Idaho, Montana, South Dakota, that kind of area, like where it's, not as prevalent, like that would be, really great to expand the market. But again, like we're going to look at everything at face value and, figure out how innovative and impactful and what your team is consisted of. Like we're going to look at all of those criteria.
Okay. Thanks, Shubha. We're getting close to the top of the hour, so I'll just fire off a couple more of these, and knowing that we won't get to all of them, but thanks again for your good questions. Here's a question that I imagine you may not be able to answer, but I'll ask it anyway to confirm. How many completed applications have been received to date?
I do not know that number.
Okay.
Sorry.
A question about whether or not applicants can update the application or their team after submission, presumably.
I don't know that question off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure, I'm like 95% sure we've received that question before, and it's on our FAQ page, so you can find it there. And if it's not there, please send us an email, because I'm sure I've seen that question before, and I'm pretty sure someone answered it, but again, I don't know it off, but I don't remember what the answer was.
Okay, I'll ask one more question probably. I think that's just because we're getting close to the top of the hour here, and then the rest you can either look at the DOE's FAQ page or we can do offline. So here's last question: can team members from several municipalities in the state working on the same municipalities in a state working on the same project with a leader coordinating? So can team members be from several municipalities in a state working on the same project with under a team leader?
I would think so. I mean, that sounds like it'd be really strong, especially if you, I'm sure like every other state that I've been to in this country, like pockets of states are different, so if you have municipality or representation from different municipalities around the state that are facing similar yet different issues, and you're coming together to, for a project or a program, that sounds great. So that would be allowed.
Excellent. Well, Shubha, I want to thank you for taking all those questions and for the overview of the challenge that you provided in the beginning. Do you want to have any sort of parting, concluding remarks before we turn things over for a sign-off?
Just thank you to CISA for holding this webinar, and thank you everyone for your great questions, and I know the interest is there, and thank you again. If you have any questions, please visit our website or send us an email. We're more than happy to clarify them for you. So thank you again for joining us today.
Great. Thanks all. We hope you'll tune in to future CISA webinars. As I noted, this Thursday we'll conduct another Sustainable Solar Education Project webinar on designing solar loan programs, and we hope you'll join us for that one. Let me pass it back to Samantha for a closeout.
Thanks, Nate, and thanks, Shubha. So there's some more information on your screen about how you can learn more about the Sustainable Solar Education Project. Our website is on the screen, and our social media links. As Nate said, we do have another webinar this Thursday. I hope you can all join us. We'll send you a copy of this webinar recording sometime this afternoon. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today.